Good morning, good morning to you. Good morning, good morning. Won't you share with a friend or two? Good morning, good morning to you. Good morning, good morning, good morning to you. You. Good morning, good morning, good morning to you. You. Good morning, good morning to you. And many more, and many more, and many more. Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome, welcome, welcome to Daring Dialogues. Pastor Ben, I see you. I see you. Good morning, good morning. I am going to make sure I put on our. I see you. I see you. Good morning, good morning. I am going to make sure I put on our. I see you. I see you. Good morning, good morning. I am going. Make sure I put on our subscribers only mode. And you have to be subscribed at least 10 minutes in order to send a message. All right, so let's get it going. Today, I want to look at failures of forgiveness, what we get wrong, and how to do better. It's Theology Thursday, it's Thinking Thursday. And by the way, we are soon to be wrapping up our season. Can you believe it? We are nearing episode 50. We will not be on tomorrow because I do have another appointment and it's a necessary one. So we will pick back up on next Tuesday. And so we will have, I almost said we will have service. We will have Daring Dialogues Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week. All right. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of next week, and possibly Friday. And then we will close out our season. So if you have been here all season long, I want to thank you. I want to take time to thank you. If you are just catching up, I'm going to put all of this season in one playlist so you'll be able to catch up. Daring Dialogue Season 15, it'll be 50 episodes and plus some bonuses where we had some people come on and share, but it will be all in one playlist so you'll be able to catch up. And then we will take a station break for June and July, and then we will start season 16 in August. Now, most of you all know that if there is some breaking news or something of that nature that we need to cover over the summer, we will put up an announcement that, will go live. But typically over the summer, we use that time to take a break. We use that time to do some more reading and research and selecting books for the new season. We use that time to connect with people in our community to see who would like to come on and who would like to share with us in their official capacity. So we're usually not taking a full break over the summer still. We are still doing things for the platform to make sure that we are providing you all with enrichment, with reading, with encouragement, all of those different things. So when we come back for the new season, we already are prepped and prepared to either continue some of the readings we've been doing and also to add new books to our sessions. Okay, so let's dive in today to failures of forgiveness, what we get wrong, and how to do better. And again, if you're coming in for the morning, good morning. I will not be here on Friday or Monday. Um, Wishing you all a happy, peaceful, enjoyable weekend, holiday weekend. We will resume on Tuesday, okay? And next week will be our closing out week for season 15. I hope I've said that clearly enough, so no one shows up on Friday or Monday saying, "Hey, where's the broadcast?" We will be back on Tuesday. So we are in the chapter entitled Forgiving Yourself. And what that means is we will probably in season 16 will pick up in um we'll probably pick up in this chapter or chapter 10, which is the last chapter of the book. So season 16, we will be starting another book on Thursdays. Today's chapter is entitled Forgiving Yourself. Forgiving yourself. And we've been talking about who can forgive when it comes to something happening to one of your friends or one of your family members. This is called third party forgiveness, where it didn't necessarily happen directly to you, but it might have happened to a family member, it might have happened to a friend. And so example of that, think about a relative passing away because of police brutality, right? It would be maybe that family member or that mother or that father that would be extending forgiveness in those cases. All right, so let's continue reading. Third parties also include members of minority communities who share social and political identification and allegiances with the victim. On this account, members of the Black community in Harlem can forgive a white pseudo supremacist murderer in South Carolina. This is because members of that community are invested in the Black person's survival. Their forgiveness is born out of their relationship of solidarity with the victim. This doesn't mean that their forgiveness can substitute for the victim's own forgiveness. It simply means that they have the standing to forgive or withhold forgiveness given this relationship. How does third party forgiveness relate to self forgiveness? It is possible for wrongdoers who stand in a relationship of care with their victim to forgive themselves for violating their beloved's interest to which they were committed. I can forgive myself for the mean things I may have said to a close friend because I stand in a relationship of care to them and I violated their happiness, their safety, their peace, and their protection to which I was committed. There's one additional reason self forgiveness is possible. Recall that forgiveness involves the letting go of or forswearing negative emotions and attitudes, although it's not limited to these practices. We often resent ourselves for what we said to a loved one, for how we treated a friend, for what we failed to do concerning a coworker. If this resentment is possible, then the relinquishment of that resentment via forgiveness is also possible. Self forgiveness then would involve the letting go of negative emotions directed at ourselves. If we contain multitudes, I can be a nice, compassionate person one day and a cruel, rude person the next. Then it's possible for the person I've become today to stop resenting the cruel person that I was yesterday. Thinking about your past self in this way does not imply that there are literally two people involved, explains the philosopher Peter Goldie. You now are the very same person that you were then. And it is precisely because of this that self forgiveness is possible. The possibility of self forgiveness and redemption then arises just because you can see your earlier self from the perspective of a renewed, changed self who is now able to rejoin the moral community. If forgiveness can occur when we give up resentment toward others, it can also occur when we stop resenting our former selves. In sum, self forgiveness is possible because wrongdoers can also be victims, stand in a relationship of care with victims, and resent themselves. Just because self forgiveness is possible, however, doesn't mean that it's easy or harmless, or that we should extend it freely. As Goldie states, we need to allow ourselves the possibility of self forgiveness achieved in the right way and at the right time in order to be able to get on with our lives and not to damage the lives of others who are close to us, who were affected by our former selves. The difficulties and the dangers. Forgiving yourself for harming others and for harming yourself both come with their own difficulties. When attempting to forgive ourselves the suffering we have caused others, we might feel so ashamed about what we've done that forgiveness is extremely difficult. Shame makes us want to hide, and it is difficult to address our past actions when we are hiding from ourselves. Shame can also make us lash out defensively. We can get caught up in defending ourselves instead of facing what we've actually done. As long as shame remains, repair can never begin. While it might seem that getting rid of negative emotions like shame might do the trick, it would be a mistake to try to get rid of all negative emotions. Why? Well, guilt is often good for the wrongdoer. Embracing guilt is a bit healthier than embracing shame. As one philosopher put it, with guilt, we submit to our own or other people's anger, but with shame, we submit to their contempt. In other words, when we feel guilt, we accept that anger in response to our actions is warranted. Through the acceptance, we own up to what we've done and confirm that it was indeed a bad thing to do. Guilt is designed to alert your consciousness to wrongdoing. So if you feel no guilt about it, how does your consciousness get alerted to the fact that you've done something wrong? When we feel shame, we give in to our own and others' disdain and hatred. This is likely to make repairing via forgiveness difficult because we will not think we are worthy of forgiveness, which is oftentimes why I know in the spiritual community, we often tell people to release yourself from shame because shame paralyzes you from actually receiving forgiveness. Perhaps this is why the actor Will Smith, in his first YouTube video uploaded after the infamous 2022 Oscars controversy, said, "I'm trying to be remorseful without being ashamed of myself. I'm trying not to think of myself as a piece of crap." In addition, guilt focuses on what we've done, whereas shame focuses on who we are. It's much more difficult to forgive yourself when you feel shameful about who you are as opposed to guilty for what you've done. This focus on ourselves as bad people instead of bad doers or bad actors can lead to unfair punishment. When you think your actions define all of who you are, it is difficult to find a piece of you that is worth redeeming. Guilt can also motivate us wrongdoers to account for what we've done. This is why, especially when I'm working with parents and sometimes teachers, I'll come across people who will say, well, that's a bad kid. That's a bad child. And I have to say, no, they're not a bad kid. They're not a bad child. What they did is bad. And I know there are going to be people that disagree with that, but she just gave you a really good nugget to take with you for life. So when I am speaking to parents or when I'm speaking to children, I make it very clear that your actions and your behaviors, right, or the actions of the child and the behaviors of the child are bad. That's what we need to address. But when you call your child a bad child, you are framing what they've done as who they are. I know it feels like a small difference in the words and the vocabulary that you use, but it makes a huge difference. Because if they are a bad child, that is who they are. That's a unmovable thing. But if they are a child who did something bad, who has bad behavior, who has bad habits, then those things can be changed. Those things can be adjusted. But when you say my child is bad, where is there for them to go? I know. Sit with that for a moment. Because some parents can't figure out why their child won't change. Stop calling them bad. Say, this is what you did. What you did was bad. What you did was wrong. Your actions, your behavior were wrong. And we need to work on that. We need to fix that. Okay. But I'm going to say it again. Guilt focuses on what we've done. Shame focuses on who we are. And unfortunately, there are a lot of children, okay? There are a lot of children who have decided, well, since my parents say I am bad, I might as well just go do bad stuff because I'm bad. I mean, you have put the label there. You've cemented something in them. And so, yes, some parents have to go undo that. Please go undo that. Especially if you have young children, middle school and younger, please go undo that. Yes, I know I called you bad, but you're not bad. Your actions were bad. Your behaviors were bad. Your words were bad. We can deal with that. We can deal with the action. We can deal with the behavior. But I want you to know that who you are, you can live beyond what you've done. So let's work on changing what you're doing. Let's work on the attitude. Let's work on the behavior. My child is a bad student. No, they're not. They're a student that is struggling academically. Language matters. I know people will probably push back on that, but the reality is I've been doing this for 25 years. Let me tell you, language matters with your child. Because as she says here, when you think your actions define all of who you are, it is difficult to find a piece of you that is worth redeeming. You want to lift a child's mind, you want to elevate their mind, you want to elevate their self-esteem, begin to speak life into that child. Even when I had to go in and be a advocate or be a witness to something that a child had done, sometimes it was horrendous and there were going to be dire consequences. There were going to be consequences, i.e., sometimes being expelled. But I would always go into that meeting advocating to say, I know that what this child did was bad. I know we have to respond to the action, but let us be reminded that this is still a child. And let us not decide that this is all this child is because of this action that they took part in or took place. All right? Because we don't want to get rid of guilt, because guilt is designed to do something inside of us. It is designed to make us aware that something has gone on that was wrong, that we need to account for. But shame is not designed to do that. Guilt can also lead us to outward action because guilt is unpleasant. We seek ways to relieve ourselves of it through apologies and compensation. Guilt can also promote good deeds. The social psychologist Mary B. Harris and colleagues conducted a study to test whether confession reduces guilt and therefore altruism. They set up March of Dimes donation sites at the entrance and exit of the Catholic Church during confession hour. What they discovered was that people were more willing to donate money prior to confession. The researchers concluded that the participants gave more money on their way to confession because they were feeling guilty. They gave less money after confession because their guilt had been relieved. The researchers concluded that indeed confession as a way of reducing guilt reduces altruism. Guilt, therefore, increases altruistic behavior. Not only is guilt healthy for the wrongdoer, it can benefit others. This is not to say that guilt can't be excessive, but making it unhealthy for all. It is only to suggest that we embrace a healthy form of guilt, given these benefits, and reject shame, which gets in the way of repair. Self-alienation is another difficulty we might face when attempting to forgive ourselves. It is tempting to stay in the past, to simply remain horrified at what we've done or what we've said, and continue to ruminate on our own behavior. This leads us to start playing the what if game. What if we had thought about this or had done that? Repeat. Our rumination might even be in good faith. We do it to show the victim that we've not forgotten the horrible things we've done. However, this game is bound to keep us in the past in negative ways as opposed to focusing on the future. If we stay in the past, we will never forgive ourselves. Acting in the present and attempting to create a better future is a way to escape self alienation. Forward looking actions are our best options. They include filling our obligations, such as making amends, and avoiding repeating our mistakes. Forgiving ourselves can also be difficult when we engage in irrational forms of self blame. This can happen when we weigh the harm we've done as being more severe than it is. We can beat ourselves up for failing to do something minor and then conclude that we are the most irresponsible person ever, the worst mother of all time, or so horrible that no one should be our friend. We can also blame ourselves for things that we are not responsible for. While we may be responsible for disappointing a friend, this doesn't mean that we let all of our friends down. The fact that we might have been dishonest with someone 10 years ago doesn't mean that we're responsible for how their life recently fell apart. This is not to say that we must not think about the repercussions of our actions, no matter how small we judge our wrongdoing to have been. Instead, it is important to encourage what the philosopher Catherine Norlock calls rational forms of self blame. They invite an accurate self reproach that is healthy and more likely to lead to self forgiveness. This form of self reproach is a balance. Robin Dillon explains this middle ground as follows. Self forgiveness does not require extinguishing all self reproach, for it is not really about the presence or absence of negative feelings and judgments, it's about the power they hold over us. Forgiving oneself means not that one no longer experiences self reproach, but that you're no longer in bondage to it, no longer controlled or crippled by a negative conception of yourself and the debilitating pain of it, no longer alienated from yourself, so that you can now live well enough. This is possible even if one retains a measure of clear sighted self reproach, overcoming it without eliminating it. An accurate form of self approach is not only a better representation of the past, it's also a better way to treat ourselves, to begin to manage our emotions, and to move forward. Even if we can escape the difficulties that come with forgiving ourselves, self forgiveness isn't always appropriate. Self forgiveness is inappropriate when it occurs without repentance. Repentance is necessary for self forgiveness. Repentance involves a change of heart. Without it, we are merely acting out of arrogance when we forgive. The philosopher Anthony Bash goes even further. Those who self forgive, he writes, if they have not repented, engage in an act of enormous selfishness and egoism that, at the expense of moral integrity, seeks to ease a troubled conscience, denies responsibility, or indicates a person with a conscience that is pathologically self absorbed and narcissistic. The philosopher Espen Gamlin also thinks self forgiveness should only occur after repentance. But for it to be appropriate, the wrongdoer must do more. He must ask the victim for forgiveness before considering whether to forgive himself. The reason for this is that the act or process cannot be a one sided affair. It is the victim who has been wronged, and the victim should be the first person to consider whether or not the wrongdoer should be forgiven. And I think that is I think that is necessary because in our society, I don't know about you, but I have seen people do something wrong, be unrepentant, have no self-reflection, and then have the nerve and audacity to go around saying, I've forgiven myself about it, so I'm moving on. Ma'am, sir, how you bypass the people that you've offended, forgiving yourself and moved on. I actually agree with this. The person you offended, you might want to stop by them first. And I liken this, and I think this is a very good example. I liken this to the United States of America. They are forever forgiving themselves concerning what they've done to um, Black Americans in this country and our descendants and our ancestors. They're forever walking around talking about, I've forgiven myself. It's time to move on. That happened way, way back when. Are y'all still talking about that? That's the attitude America has taken towards what they've done in the past. I've forgiven myself. I've moved on. But you have really not, because the people that you offended and their descendants have not forgiven you. I'm just saying, very applicable. Addressing the offense is an essential first step to self forgiveness. It involves taking responsibility, showing remorse, and engaging in repentance. And I know when people hear the word repentance, they think just in the Christian context, but no, repentance is something that is in any context. It can be in any context. It simply means to change your mind, to turn away from the thing that you were doing. Has the United States turned away from anything they were doing? No. They put it into other forms. They've evolved it, but they haven't completely turned away from it. It is true that self forgiveness cannot be one sided and that it should have some involvement from the victim. It's the nature and degree of this involvement that I am concerned with. Gamlin thinks we should ask the victim for forgiveness before forgiving ourselves. On the other hand, I think it is best that the wrongdoer express a hope for forgiveness rather than ask for it. Gamlin thinks the victim's involvement is not limited to simply granting forgiveness. He, the wrongdoer, will need forgiveness to move on with his life, to regain a sense of self respect and self worth. He will need confirmation from the victim that he is not a bad person, that the wrong he did does not stem from a permanent defect in their character. They will need the victim to tell them or communicate with them through forgiveness that they are a human being with dignity and worth. They will need affirmation from the victim that they will not hold against them what they did in the future, that they will not have to carry this burden of guilt with them forever. In short, the repentant wrongdoer will need to be forgiven by his victim. Now, that is Gamlin's approach. She is saying she doesn't think it needs to go that far. Let's see why she says that. I'm exhausted reading all the needs a victim is supposed to satisfy via forgiveness. This is actually too much work for the victim and too much to expect forgiveness to accomplish. As I've argued throughout this book, victims are already taking on so much. We must be careful not to overburden the victims in the aftermath. There are a lot of things that we may want from a victim, but not all these wants equate to needs. Minimally, in certain contexts and after careful consideration, we should express remorse to victims, repentance, and a hope for forgiveness, even if it is not granted. But we must remember that this may not be welcomed in every circumstance. Some victims want nothing to do with us. To beg for their involvement despite this fact would be disrespectful. If the victim does not satisfy our wants, but we have taken responsibility, we've repented for it, and we have considered the victim, the gravity of the harm and timing, we should begin the journey towards self forgiveness. It would be awful to think that my stepfather's self forgiveness depended on mine. That is to grant me too much power. It's a power I do not want. To be sure, philosophers agree that granting forgiveness is an exercise of moral power. I do not deny this. The power I am concerned with here is one that is exclusively mine and that overrides offenders' willingness to repair their lives. On the other hand, self forgiveness becomes dangerous when we think it can substitute for the victim's forgiveness. The acceptance and grace we give ourselves is not the same as what can be given by the victim, nor is it a replacement. To think that it can replace their forgiveness is to disregard the victim's agency. My stepfather's self forgiveness is not a replacement for my mother's or my own forgiveness. Irrational forms of self blame involve not only being too hard on oneself, but also being too easy on oneself. Irrational self blame is a danger we must avoid. When we forgive ourselves without any difficulty and quickly, because we don't really see past our actions or those past actions as being harmful, or we see victims as somewhat responsible for the wrong, it's clear that we're being too easy on ourselves. Hello, America. Seeing the victim as partly responsible for the wrong is an example of victim blaming. We inaccurately present our wrongdoing as less severe because we have assigned some form of undue blame to the victim. We might say, well, they let me do it, or it's their fault. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time, or they should have complied to make our harm seem less severe. To escape this danger, we must face the hard truth of what we've done while being careful not to be too hard or too easy on ourselves. I admit this is a difficulty in and of itself. Another danger we should stay clear of is abdication. We must be careful not to use self forgiveness to relinquish our responsibilities. You can imagine a person who says, I already forgave myself. Yeah, we see it every day. In response to a request to pay reparations or accept a fair punishment. They are using self forgiveness to shut down any further discussion about their past actions. We're literally living in this country right now. And not only are they using self forgiveness to shut down any further discussion about their past actions, they're actually trying to erase history and remove history to shut down any further discussion about their past actions. Their self forgiveness, rather than the offense, becomes the headline. This is like celebrities using their public apologies to appropriate the narrative, as we discussed in the previous chapter. We must we must resist, using self-forgiveness to distract attention away from our having committed blameworthy actions. Instead, we should be using it to make amends. And hopefully next week when we return, we will look at the curious case of regret. And we will wrap up chapter 9, and then we'll start chapter 10 in the next season, which is the last chapter here. Chapter 10, and then she has a conclusion. So we'll make sure we get to those as well. All right. So what do you think? Do you think that people are rushing to the self-forgiveness? Do you have an issue with guilt or shame? Because hopefully we all recognize that they're not the same. Shame is producing something in us different from what guilt is producing within us. Um, I am ready to chat. So I am going to send the link. All right, I am back. I have sent the link, and I links. So hopefully you'll be able to come on fairly easy. And I'm going to check it on my end again. Yes. Okay. So there is two links down there. So let's see. That's weird. Hmm. Do you see the link? I'm going to my sent messages and it's saying I sent something to you. Um, it's saying I sent it to you, but I don't see it coming up in my sent emails. That's very weird. Let me try it again. All right. Both are telling you can't join because I'm no longer live, but I'm right here. All right. We'll have to figure this out. I'm not sure why it's telling you you can't join. So, that being said, I'm going to end here for today. We'll have to play around with this program again and see what is going on, but we won't do that live. Okay. I do want to thank you all for your time and attention. I hope that this reading that we've done today, I hope it's made you think a little bit about self forgiveness, shame, guilt, how we process it for ourselves, making sure that we're not labeling people as bad versus dealing with and addressing and confronting bad behavior, bad, uh, yeah, all of that. Oh, there you are. Okay, I see you. Good morning. All right, good morning. I can see you. I can't hear you yet. Still working on hearing you. I can hear you now, but I hear some plane in the background.
Yeah, there's a plane in the background. I'm actually working near the Fort Lauderdale International Airport. Well, not near it, but in the path of the plane. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, listen, yeah, America is definitely guilty. They've forgiven themselves, but actually they haven't. Or maybe they have because they're trying to return to the past.
Mhm.
So that lets us know that, oh, we know what we did and we want to go back there.
Mhm.
So, no, we've forgiven ourselves to make it easier for us to go back there.
Mhm.
See, forget the pain that you all have felt and suffered, and how you're still suffering because of our financial differences. Because we took all the money and some of the money we were supposed to give you for reparations, we said nope, you can't have it. See,
Mhm.
and then when you build your own towns without that money, oh, we gotta burn it down because we can't have that. We can't have you coming up on your own, and we're not going to help you, but we can do everything we can to stop you. That's America.
Mhm.
That's America. And America, listen, I'm going to say this like I've been telling people.
It's the
America
it's
is,
the I would say it's the leading of America because
yes.
there are some people that I think they're starting to understand now
Mm-hmm.
that America is about power.
Yeah.
And that power doesn't necessarily um mean that because you are white you have it.
Right.
You might have social capital because you're
Mm-hmm.
white,
Mm-hmm.
but you still may not have economic power.
Right.
And I think some people who have been blinded by the social capital of whiteness are now starting to see, oh, they don't care about me either.
Of course.
They just gave me the carrot of the social capital to keep me from paying attention to the fact that they don't care about me either. They'll use me to do their bidding just
Hmm.
as much as they would destroy other people. And I think more people have come to see that under this current administration. But go ahead.
Listen, here's the thing. If they actually knew the history, they would know that. They would have seen it coming. The
Hmm.
history is that not everybody that they're calling white now were considered white.
Hmm.
Okay? For instance, like the Irish. Irish and black folks are pretty much neck and neck. They work together. They did a whole lot. There was a whole village that is now called Central Park, that was called Seneca Village, where Irish and black people built that community. They lived there. And that should have let people know that, oh, we don't care nothing about y'all. But they told the Irish people, oh, you're white, and these black folks are taking your jobs. Sound familiar? Yeah, they've been using that same lie to fearmonger all this time. Irishmen decided, oh yeah, we're white. See, learn from the past. From the first of all, learn the past, not the watered down stuff that they're teaching. Learn the past, learn the history, the true history, which is something that they're trying to erase. Because if you get rid of African American history, you get rid of the true history of this country. Because we're in every phase
Hmm.
of it. You get rid of our history in this country, now you've gotten rid of the history of the country. So,
Hmm.
but I'm going to say this: America is in the judgment stage, and they're in the beginning of the wrath stage. What do I mean? Okay, let's get rid of this African American library. See, let's shut that down. And what happened? They're
You're breaking up a little bit. You're breaking up. I can hear you now.
Okay, their Museum of the Confederacy got
Hmm.
destroyed in a storm by a tree. God sent the tree, a simple tree, hit it and destroyed it. Okay, you want to shut down that my people's library, my people's museum? Okay, I got one for you. Now, you want to deny slavery. You want to
Hmm.
erase our history concerning slavery and everything else. What does God do? Oh, this plantation that y'all trying to whitewash and say, and it's all these slave owners, they were great people and all this stuff, and you want to whitewash that and rent it out for people to have weddings and stuff there, basically celebrating history in a sense. I mean, celebrating slavery in a sense. God say, okay, I'm gonna set this thing on fire. And all 12 of these fire departments ain't gonna be able to stop it because I'm gonna let them think they got it, and then I'm gonna blow it back up. See, and he did it. Y'all better be paying attention. You better be paying attention because these are messages, clear messages, that if you know anything about God and you have any type of real relationship with God, you're getting those messages. You're seeing what's actually happening, and you know why. See, so y'all can run behind this guy if you want to and repeat his lies if you want to. God ain't winking and he ain't turning his head. You need to remember that. Oh, and you're deporting these people? Yet Christ said, treat foreigners as though they're one of you. That ain't what's happening. That ain't what's happening. But you say you're Christian, but you for this. No. Stop lying. You're operating in an antichrist spirit. Let's just call it what it is. Because you're operating against Christ. You're operating, deliberately operating, because when you're told that Christ said this, yeah, but there should be no yeah, but. Well, they're taking our jobs. Well, no. No, 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 no. What did Jesus say? That should be the bottom line.
Mm,
And they
mm,
lied about them taking your jobs. They were doing jobs in agriculture. Now agriculture is going up. Why? Because they don't have the bodies to do the work. Why? Because
mhm.
a certain person lied. They wanted to deport him. Y'all put him in office, and he's doing what he said he was going to do, and prices are going up. Oh, tariffs. Oh, it's going to bring prices down. We kept telling y'all we're paying that. We didn't know what we were talking about. Now you're seeing for yourselves. See, pay attention to black people that's trying to teach you history. We know why, because we've been seeing it for over 400 years. Oh, now you don't get me wrong. You got those that are being paid. You know the sambos and samboistas or samboettes or whatever you want to call the females. You
Sambolita.
sambolichas. Okay, you got those. They're being paid to deceive other black people.
Mhm.
Slaves coming off the slave ships. How did they not overthrow those that enslaved them? Because they had well-dressed black people meeting them at the ship,
Mhm.
walking them through dark tunnels to the auction
Mhm.
block.
Mhm.
Yeah, they use us against each other, and some of us haven't even waken up to that yet.
Mhm.
So it's all coming out. Everything is coming to fruition. God is doing what He said He would do in His Word. God spoke it. Believe it. You can't stop it, but somehow they feel like they can. How do you? Okay. But these are the same people that said that God said that this man would win in 2020, and then when he didn't, they say the man stole the election. These are the same people, which
Mm.
means they don't know God, and they're praying that you don't know God, so you will follow their lies.
That you have no they're hoping you don't have any connection with your creator.
Right? And you're proving that you don't because you're following it. That's the bottom line. Like as I've been saying, this last election was an election of the heart. God was
Mhm.
going to expose these hearts. He was going to
Mhm.
expose
Uh-oh, you're breaking up.
life when they heard it. When you understand how things work, you knew he wasn't going to be able to get prices down so quickly.
Mhm.
He doesn't have that kind of power. Nobody does. You knew he wouldn't be able to end the war in Ukraine so quickly. You would know that.
Mm.
It doesn't even take critical thinking. It just takes thinking.
This is true.
Period.
This is true.
Period.
I like to say that many people who chose this administration, they chose to confirm their biases.
Mhm.
That's all it was. Because you
Mhm.
can't tell me if you were choosing policy, then that we know that that makes you um a Yahtzee sympathizer, right? Because people could
Mhm.
look at the policies, and if you read Project 2025, you could see that these policies were um, detrimental to everyone and not
Mhm.
and also and almost nihilistic, meaning that your way of life as you knew it was going to be completely destroyed and upended.
Mhm.
But for the most part, a lot of people chose to vote that way because he confirmed their biases. If
Mhm.
you thought a certain way about foreigners, he confirmed that for you.
Mhm.
If you thought a certain way about black people, he confirmed that for you.
Mhm.
If you thought a certain way about disabled people, poor people, people of a different who choose to orient themselves differently than you, and when it comes to your gender, he confirmed those things for you.
Mhm.
Notice I said he confirmed them for you, not that they were true, but he just parroted back to people their bigotry
Mm-hmm.
because people
Exactly.
put their because people were putting their bigotry out there. So all he did was take your bigotry talking points,
That's what he did.
gather them up into a bowl, and then spit them back out at you. And that's why you had so many people talking about, well, I don't know what it is about him, but he just really speaks to me. And he really speaks to my concerns. Yeah, he does.
Mm-hmm.
He took your biases, put them into a melting pot, and then regurgitated them back out to you. And so you started
Mm-hmm.
to identify with him because he was really mirroring you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what good con artists do.
And let's not make no mistake about it. He is a con artist.
They mirror you. They start to mirror how you talk, how you speak, what you're saying, and then you start talking about, oh, I feel like he really his messages really resonated with me. Of course they did. Of
Yeah.
course they did.
Right.
He
Listen,
told
because
you everything you wanted to hear
yeah.
while snatching everything away that you actually needed for life.
Mm-hmm. Yep. He said, look in the mirror. And while you're looking in the mirror, he was picking your pocket.
Mm-mm-mm.
Yeah. You know how a magician will have you looking at this hand, but
Mm-hmm.
with the left hand they're doing something else. Yeah, that's what he
Mm-hmm.
did. He said, "Oh, look over here, look at the mirror. This is you. I'm speaking on all your points, showing you.
Mm-hmm.
While
Mm-hmm.
you're focusing on that, I'm going to take away your social security. I'm going to take away your health care. I'm going to take away your jobs. I'm going to take
Mm-hmm.
this away, that away. I'm going to have planes falling out of the sky, and I'm going to blame it on DEI. Why? Because you believe that. You believe DEI is a problem for everything. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to blame DEI. And you're going to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
As he said way back in the 70s, if he ever ran for president, he was run as a Republican because there's Republicans so stupid they will vote for him.
You're freezing up. You're freezing up. I can hear you now.
Those were his words, though. He said that Republicans are stupid, they will vote for him. Now, my question is, did they prove him wrong?
No,
No, they didn't.
they did
They
not.
did. They willfully proved him right. And that's the crazy part. That's the crazy part. You said that I would be stupid to vote for you. Let me prove you right. Where they do that at?
Apparently, the United States of America.
Right. Right.
Apparently, apparently,
That lets you
and
know their
so
mental state.
it's a lot. It's a lot. But as we were reading today, as we were reading, I definitely could start seeing our country in what was being described. I was like,
Hmm.
wow, that
Yeah.
sounds like America. This notion of forgiving oneself before you've even repented, before you've even
Hmm.
committed to doing right, before you have made reparations.
Hmm.
Um, and so I want us to think about that. Are we, when we're dealing with forgiveness and the decision of whether or not we're going to forgive ourselves and when that happens and the timing, as she said, are we doing it out of shame? Are we stuck in shame, or are we acknowledging our guilt in whatever it is that has happened in our life or whatever it is we've done? Have we moved out of shame? Have we acknowledged our guilt in whatever happened? And then are we able to move forward? I think those are some important things to
Hmm.
consider when we talk about self forgiveness. But when it comes to our country, I think we have clearly seen that our country has decided that it has forgiven itself without
Mm-hmm.
any repair, with whatever acknowledgments that they had. They're now retracting those acknowledgments. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if people saw, but yesterday the Justice Department came out and said the Biden Civil Rights Department got things wrong, and we know that they didn't. The evidence was there. And all of the measures that they took to try to hold people accountable, remember?
Mm-hmm.
All the measures they took to try to hold people accountable in the case of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, this current Justice Department decided to retract those admissions. I can't even begin to tell you how wicked that is, that you would retract and say they weren't guilty of violating people's civil rights when everybody saw and everybody knows, and the record is clear, and their cases were clear violations of their civil rights.
Mm-hmm.
So, what that tells us is they're ultimately trying to say Black people don't have civil rights that should be respected.
Mm-hmm.
And what that is telling you is they're trying to go back to reversing the Dred Scott decision, which says that Black people have no rights in this country that are to be respected because they are considered and their descendants are considered enslaved forever. That is the Dred
Mm-hmm.
Scott decision that they're trying to sneak in by reversing the judgments of their civil rights. Because what they're ultimately saying is from the top down, because remember, all of our law enforcement agencies sit under the Department of Justice. So what they're saying from the
Mm-hmm.
top down is this is almost a green light to say you can violate Black people's rights to be protected in this country, and you're not going to see judgment under this department, this um under this era of the Department of Justice. Go ahead. Can you hear me? Okay.
That what they're doing causes.
Mm-hmm.
See, what Mr. Hinton did, that was a response.
Yep. And I,
See,
and I,
he didn't just
I was about to say
oh,
that.
go ahead.
I said,
Yeah, that
and you wonder why you get a case like Mr. Hinton, because now you're saying it's okay to violate the rights of Black people. That's ultimately what you're saying from the head down. And there are not going to be a lot of people that just say, I'm going to have my rights violated and I'm not going to get any recourse for it.
right, right, exactly. So people say he was wrong. I'm gonna say this, okay? Uh, I am against taking a life, period, unless it's absolutely necessary. His son's life was taken and it was not necessary. Well, how do you know what he got shot in the back
Hmm.
and he was a threat to nobody?
Several
That
times.
was yes, several times. That was unnecessary. There's no way that you can convince anybody that has a brain that can actually think that it was justified. No way. No way. So what this man did, he was lied to. That's number one. He was lied to. But then he saw the video. You don't think that was going to make him snap?
Hmm.
And he said, you know what? They took mine. I'm gonna take one of them. An eye for an eye. That was his mindset at that point. An eye for an eye. That was
Yep.
his mindset. You pushed him there with this foolishness. Do you think that you don't think that there's going to be more of that going on once all this stuff start really hitting because of these policies? You don't think that's going to happen? Police officers, the good ones, they're probably going to start resigning.
They might.
They might. I mean, now granted, this police officer, was he a good cop? I don't know. Was he the one that took his son's life? No, he wasn't. But what did his son do that warranted his death? See, that's how you got to look at this. He didn't do anything to lose his life over. Nothing. Orlando Castile, what did he do? Complied. He complied, and he was a black man. We got to take his life. So that what just complied don't work with us because we do it too many times and still end up losing our lives. And just because you hear a cop say comply, comply, that doesn't mean that they're not complying because I saw a video where a young man was a black guy. He was driving, the police were chasing him. He stopped his car. He got out of the car, laid down on his face and belly on the parking lot, stretched his arms and legs out, and they commenced to beating him and telling him to comply. Well, he's not compliant. I say, don't let their words deceive you. Look at the video. He's not fighting back. He laid down on his belly and gave himself up.
Mm-hmm.
They're lying to you, and you can't even see it. You're listening to the words and not looking at the video. See, and that's what people that don't think, that's what they do. They go on what they hear and not what they see. And MAGA is full of them. Let's be straight on that because he can blatantly lie to you about something that you know you didn't see or that you saw something different, but he tell you, well, this is what happened, and you say, okay, yep, that's it. In South
Yep.
Africa, they're killing the white people and taking their land, which is a lie. They're not killing anybody. They've made it
Nope.
known that listen, give us our land back. We'll do it by policy. We'll do it by policy. He said, but if you refuse, there will be a revolution. They're not taking
And
anybody's lives.
and the reality is, because I actually went and looked at some of the data and the stats on the economy. The reality is about 80% of the economic power is still in
White
their
people.
hands.
That's right.
Not just land,
Hmm.
business, stock market.
Yep.
I think I read like less than 10% of the stock market value is actually owned and in the hands of the black people there. So they still largely control the economy, which is why there hasn't had to be any bloodshed or any of that. Because they know they still largely hold the economy. So what is there to fight about?
Hmm.
But yeah,
Nothing.
it's a lot of things to consider. What are your final thoughts as we wrap up here? I know we're a little past time.
Well, listen. Now, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say two things because you mentioned repentance. Repentance is a change. You've changed. You changed your ways. You changed your mindset. You've changed. But repentance also requires repair,
Mm-hmm.
reparations.
Mm-hmm.
It also you can, but we want to get away from that. See, oh, that's not necessary. God says it's necessary. Go talk to Him. Now, self forgiveness. The only time I can say self forgiveness is warranted or right is when you've actually tried to seek forgiveness from a person.
Mm-hmm.
You've done all the above. You've repented. You've tried to do repair and all those things, and they won't forgive you. At
Mm-hmm.
that point, yes, self forgiveness is in line. But if you haven't tried to do any of those things,
Mm-hmm.
and you talk about self forgiveness, get out of here. Get out of here. No, because God ain't going to forgive you. That's number one. He ain't going to forgive you unless you're trying to do all those things that I mentioned. So if God don't forgive you, how can you forgive yourself? God told you what's required for his forgiveness. He told you about repentance.
And we're talking specifically in the context of people who believe in God and have faith, because we know
Right, exactly.
some
Exactly.
people don't believe in God, and we understand that. And some people don't believe in the creator, and we understand that. In those
Hmm.
contexts, self-forgiveness might work. But we're talking about if you say that you have a belief in a creator and you believe in God, in those contexts, there needs to be some repair and some repentance. And that's not just, like I said earlier, that's not just a Christian concept. These people who are philosophers, some of them are not Christians. They're still talking about the concept of repentance because it is a universal concept.
Hmm.
Okay. I think we're going to stop there for today. I want to thank you all for your time and attention. This has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, and I've been your host today, Shantae Charles. Remember, we will not be meeting on Friday or Monday. We will resume on Tuesday, and we will wrap up our season next week. Light is the most daring opposition to darkness, so continue to go out and be what, Pastor?
Light.
Light. Take care, everyone. Be well, and most importantly, be light.